Start with the prayer and a pledge. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for those who are gathered here. Glad to see greater participation. Let us work together for the benefit of those who live in the city. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell.
Here.
Mr. Bronner.
Here.
Mr. Bishop.
Here.
Mr. Boehner.
Here.
Mr. Tommen.
Here.
Mrs. Kroger.
Here.
Mrs. Edichico.
Here.
So we have 7 present, and we have a quorum for business and a quorum for legislation. We have approval of the minutes next from the April 15th meeting.
So moved.
We have a motion from Mr. Boehner
Second.
and a second from Mr. Powell to approve the meeting minutes from the April 5th meeting. All, you want to do roll call? We'll just do all in favor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good, voice vote. Okay, we have audience asking participation. 2 people have registered. We'll give them priority, and then anyone else after that. Ryan Collins. Before we start, I'm supposed to read this. I'm gonna boil it down. State your name. You get 5 minutes. But the rule also says that you're supposed to state your address. I'll entertain a motion from council to suspend that rule.
I'll make a motion that we suspend the rule that the guest speaker, state their address.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion from Mr. Powell, second from Mr. Bishop to suspend a rule requiring the statement of the address. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Voice vote carry. Very good. Mr. Collins, please begin.
Thank you. The last time I was here, we had some discussion on some of the projects we're thinking about doing, so I did some follow-up, and I just wanted council to be advised. We talked about the hill.
Hold on a second. This will not cost you your time. Grab that microphone, please. I cannot hear you, and make sure the switch is on.
They're not.
Not?
No.
One was plugged in.
I don't see a switch, but.
Here. I'm gonna get this one.
You're caught
Now
on
it's
the chair.
You're caught on chair, Carla.
Okay. It's my show now. What do you want to hear?
Hey, Anna.
Hey, hold that for me.
Is it working?
No, just take it off the chair.
Here, let's use that.
Does that work better?
Yes, it's a little.
Probably too close to the speaker.
Yeah, a little.
How about if I-
Let's move it back on the table here. Just right here on the corner. That'll probably pick up just fine.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, please restart. You have a full new 5 minutes.
Okay. One of the things that we talked about last time was, and we had some questions about it, was the Hilltop Fields. So I did look into that, and those fields are not for public use. The fields will be closed and maintained for security to prevent damage and to mitigate any kind of liability for the district. And there is no VYO agreement in place yet for that. So that kind of clears up when we talked about that, that the school did build those, but they won't be for public use. Second issue we talked about is the stadium, and I know there's, wanting to improve it. One of the things we do have to look at as a government agency is to look into Title II of the ADA. That does require local governments to make their programs and services accessible to persons with disability. This includes the stadium. I did reach out to the Department of Justice and ask advice on something like this. They made it pretty clear that there's no such thing as a grandfathered structure, and that the city has to improve those. I do have some information that I can give to whoever wants it that says that, it can be up to the government if it's gonna be, the way they word it, too much money basically. Like the mayor can say it's gonna cost too much money to do that. However, after letting them know how much we wanted to spend on the field and the track, they both said that they would frown upon making those improvements and not making improvements to the stadium itself. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on is something I've never thought I'd ever see in the city of Reading. Last week when we were here, there was only 3 speakers. We had a speaker ask for more time. And for the first time ever, we actually had 3 council members. Ms. Edichico, Ms. Kroger, and Mr. Bronner voted not to allow that person to speak. That person has a lot of knowledge and time because he was on council before, so he had a lot of issues that he knew about that had to do with the stadium. I can only assume, and maybe I'm wrong, however, usually when people don't want to hear people speak, it's because they don't like what they're saying or they don't agree with their ideals. That is the exact thing what cancel culture is, and we see how that's taken hold in some city councils and some school boards, and that is something that I don't think we need to do here in Reading. So I would hope that those members think about that in the future if someone asks for more time. I think it's important that citizens get to be heard, no matter what their message is. And I think the 4 council members that agreed that he had some valuable information that needed to be heard. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Next up, Bob Ashbrock.
Bob Ashbrock, and I'll happily give my address, 221 Walnut Street, Reading, Ohio, 45215. I just wanted to elaborate somewhat on the same discussion that was taking place last week regarding the recreational needs of the community, and it ties in very nicely with the information that Mr. Collins just shared with regard to ADA improvements and such. I'm specifically calling the council's attention the requirement as described in the VSWC, which was the architectural firm from Mason that was commissioned by the school district to design and oversee construction of their building, and who simultaneously or under a joint arrangement with the city performed a site evaluation of the current stadium. In that particular site, that particular study, they mentioned twice the fact that if the master plan of improvements are made, an on-site stormwater detention will be required. So this is something that I fear would be too easily swept under the carpet. The city of Reading has a less than stellar record with regard to managing stormwater concerns. As many of you know, much of Ward 2 is in the designated floodplain, and property owners who have a federally backed mortgage are required to purchase rather expensive flood insurance. There's a program that was available to the city that would have potentially garnered for those citizens a 15% discount on those premiums if the city could demonstrate that it was ardently adhering to its stormwater plans, and because the city was not, then that discount was denied essentially all those other parties in Ward 2 who would otherwise have been benefited from it. So I asked that council perhaps revisit once more the planned construction of a new stormwater facility as proposed by MSD. 3 years ago when they first proposed that, I pointed out an area on the pool property that could be used for stormwater detention, and have demonstrated the practicality of such an approach. The city stormwater bill allows for essentially offsets, so that while there may not be a actual stormwater detention area available on the stadium property, the stormwater regulations that we have would allow potentially for that need to be offset by collecting stormwater, for example, from the pool parking lot and the pool and the field house. So I think that that's still something that this council could potentially revisit and secure the preservation of that area for that specific purpose, so that if this turf improvement or other stadium improvements are pursued, that there would be a convenient and inexpensive means of meeting that requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashbrock. Any other audience participation from people who are not registered? Okay. Moving on then. Reading of communications.
I do have one. Just a second here. Okay. I received an email from a Nathaniel Braun, who is a member at large for the Cincinnati Pride Board of Directors. And I'm going to read what he sent here just a second. Here we go. It says, The Cincinnati Pride Parade and Festival is one of the largest festivals in our area and attracted over 180,000 attendees in 2019. We are very excited to be returning to our annual parade and festival on Saturday, June 25th, 2022. You can find the mission statement for the Cincinnati Pride below. The purpose of Cincinnati Pride is to provide the greater Cincinnati LGBTQIA+ community and our allies a forum that promotes inclusion and acceptance while affirming individuality. We work to produce programs that inspire, educate, and commemorate our rich history, while also celebrating our diverse culture. We foster collaboration with area organizations and businesses through sponsorships, partnerships, and programming, and provide resources to positively impact the lives of all individuals regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. We provide information, support local economic growth by partnering with the community to attract individuals to the greater Cincinnati area, collaborate with other organizations through outreach programs, citizen involvement and events, and educational resources to those inside and outside of the LGBTQ community. We are asking our larger communities to help us celebrate June 2022 as Pride Month through Pride Month proclamations. We would like the City of Reading to consider passing a Pride Month resolution to show your support of your LGBTQ+ residents. I've attached sample wording. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you'd like more information on how Reading can be more inclusive and welcoming. While these proclamations serve as an important symbolic step, we also implore your municipality to join the 34 localities that have passed meaningful non-discrimination protections for the LGBTQ+ community in the state of Ohio. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you. Best, Nate.
Is there a motion to receive and file?
I'll make a motion to receive and file.
Second.
So motion by Mrs. Edelchico and a second by Mrs. Kroger to receive and file the communication. Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're going to receive and file that. Any other communications? Seeing none. Guest speakers, Sarah Miller. We can come out there.
I can stand up there if Shelley would be my. I'll be your technical.
There you go. We'll do it that way.
There. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for allowing me to come and present at the big show tonight. I told them I've been going to other councils and most of them have been over Zoom or around a table, so this has been really exciting for me. So I'm here to present on our new program. It's not necessarily new, it's a renewed program at Freestar Food Bank that actually just started in December. And I'm just gonna walk you through a few of the things, the things that we're trying to make sure to do outreach about, and that I think people in your community might benefit from. I'm gonna start, you can go to the next slide. So our program was created to help people who need health coverage find coverage through Medicaid or the marketplace. We go out, I actually cover 8 counties, so I've been going out to libraries, to community centers, to meetings, to schools, any place that they need us to sit down with someone and walk them through the whole process of applying for health coverage. I don't know how you all feel about it, like when you go to your job, a new job, and you have to go through all of that paperwork to start insurance, or if you've ever applied through the marketplace, but it can be really confusing. So our group is trained to walk people through that process, to let them know exactly what's needed and what steps they have to go through to obtain insurance. So one of the big messages that we're trying to get out there right now about Medicaid is the impact of the end of the public health emergency. So I don't know how many people know this, but with the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which was passed in March 2020, people who had Medicaid at that time and anyone who's gotten Medicaid since then has been able to keep it. No matter what's happened with their income, no matter where they've moved around the state, no matter what has happened, they've been able to keep it. So what will happen at the end of the public health emergency is that JFS, or the Medicaid department of that county, will be sending out renewals to renew everyone, to find out what's gone on in their lives, their life changes that may affect their eligibility. So the first thing that we're trying to do is to make sure that everybody who has Medicaid, and food assistance for that matter, updates their information, their contact information with JFS or the Medicaid department of their county. We want to make sure that everybody gets their renewal so they can renew their Medicaid and not lose it. Secondary to that is there are going to be a lot of people who have had life changes since, wages have increased at jobs that didn't pay a lot before the pandemic. So they may find themselves over income for Medicaid. So we are here also to help someone sign up for marketplace insurance. There is actually, not only is there a special enrollment period that was created for people because open enrollment ended in January. There's a special enrollment period for people who just lost their health insurance, but there's also one for people who have an income between $138 and $150, the federal poverty line. That's about $17,000 to $19,000 a year. So people who never had Medicaid before and weren't sure what to do, who are within those income limits, can now apply for marketplace without needing a special enrollment period. You can go to the next one. So so this is just a little bit about our teams. So we right now, another reason that I'm here today is that we are actually going to be at the Reading Library on Tuesday the 17th of this month and Friday the 20th from 11 to 2. So if you have anyone in your life that may need to help updating their information, or just to apply, or just to find out more about getting health coverage, actually Amadou, who's in the back row, and I will be there to help anybody that needs it. And we are through the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, so we are just here to help no matter what. The last slide is just a little bit more about the SEP, the special enrollment periods, and the different ways that you might be eligible for marketplace coverage. And then the last slide is very simple. We know how confusing and hard the process of getting health insurance can be. So we just want to be here to help anybody who needs help with it. So that's it. That's all. I told you to be short.
Can you just repeat the dates again? That you'll be at the library?
Yes. And I'm actually going to, Shelly, I'll send you some graphics and things so you can share it with people and the dates. But it's May the 17th and May the 20th from 11 to 2. And I have some flyers also. I know that everybody kind of knows Free Store Food Bank, but they may not know all of the different programs that we have within our agency. I've also provided some sheets back there, and that have like a list of everything we do, barring there's 2 things that aren't on there, our vocational programs. But if you have someone in your life that needs that kind of help, you may not need it, but you may have somebody that does, please take one of those and share it with them, because we help with a lot of different stuff. So thank you. That's it.
Any other questions for Sarah? Very good. Thank you, Sarah. Next up, Nick Dietrich. Do you have a presentation okay, so we're good with that.
Thanks, Sarah.
When you're ready.
All right, thank you much. Mr. President and members of the council, thank you for having me today. Really appreciate making some time in the schedule. I might get the reverb on this.
Okay, Brenda, can you aim that a little closer toward him? That'll work. Thank you.
Thank you much. Appreciate y'all having me today. As a brief introduction, my name is Nick Dietrich. I am a co-owner of White Wisteria Bridal Boutique. I'm also currently serving as president for the Reading Bridal District, in that I also sit on the Reading Chamber of Commerce, and I also am a member of the Dora committee within the Reading Bridal District, which is the capacity in which I'm here today. So, briefly wanted to go over what the Dora is today. I'm hoping to break this into 4 little chunks, and after each chunk, maybe field a few questions if anybody on council has one. If not, I can move on. Is that okay with you all? Fantastic. Just to outline that, first I want to introduce what the Dora is, followed by who is currently pursuing the Dora in Reading. Following that, concerns regarding the Dora, and lastly, what we feel the benefits of having a Dora in Reading would be. So kicking things off, what is a Dora? It stands for Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area. And in the envelopes I've got on the desks here, there should be a packet of information from the Ohio Department of Commerce. It's kind of their Dora for Idiots guide. I've been using it extensively. So going into that and reading verbatim off of this, a designated outdoor refreshment area is nothing more than a specified area of land that a local legislative authority, such as yourselves, has designated as exempt from certain open container provisions as defined within the legislative act that created the Dora. In layman's terms, it allows us to designate an area where people can walk around with containers of alcohol while not being inside of a liquor establishment. I think it's important to add here what the Dora is not. It is not an alcohol free-for-all. You cannot go crack a beer and walk down the street and expect things to be all hunky-dory. There are still rules in the Dora. A nice part of those rules is that the municipality has almost complete control over how they are set in place and executed. The day-to-day operations are more or less free of any interference from the Department of Liquor Control. Their only role in this process is to receive an application and review the application to ensure it fits within the guidelines they have set, and then periodically, every 5 years, they'd go back and just re-review that to ensure that everything is still up to par. So regarding those regulations, if you want to read along, I'm not going to just read every single word out of here. I'll try to summarize it. Page 2 on that designated outdoor refreshment area starts to go into what those requirements are. So first big thing you'll see on this page here is regarding municipality size and how large a Dora can be. We would fit inside that 35,000 or less area there, which allows it up to 150 acres of space. Now, at the Laws and Contracts Committee the other month, we went over this and just did some rough math. That is well beyond what we would need for a Dora in Reading, given the area we would like to utilize, which would be up and down Benson, as well as up and down a segment of Reading Road. Now, for the actual application, we would need to get that area surveyed officially and sent in with our application package. In addition to that, we would need to describe the establishments within the Dora. So that would include a large chunk of the Bridal District, as well as businesses up and down Reading. I believe the limits we set on Reading would be marked off by the Valley Tavern on the north side and Our Place on the south side. In addition to just a list of establishments, we would also need to have a statement that at least 4 of the liquor license holders in the area would be okay with the Dora. So as of right now, that area would include Benson's Tavern, Reading Community Arts Center, Foley's, Red Wine, Valley Tavern, Strong's Pizza, Our Place, and the Legions. We are currently working, when I say we, referring to the committee from the Bridal District, working on reaching out to all of those establishments and ensuring that they're on board with it. We don't think they'd be opposed, but we still want to check and make sure we've got their blessing on this as well. But a minimum of 4 would allow us to move forward with the Dora. We also need to include in that, that application evidence that the land that we are using is not going to violate any zoning requirements already in place in the municipality. I believe we are all good with that, but we still want to do our due diligence and ensure that we are not violating anything in the areas we've laid out. We also need to have a proposed health and safety plan. That boils down to the police department having a plan in place of how to police the area, as well as a means of cleaning up trash, or a plan in place to clean up trash so we don't just wreck the area. It's important to add in here the municipality, if this is passed, would then push this along to the Department of Liquor. They would in turn review it, and following that review, as long as we were approved, we would have a functioning Dora. We can go back at any time if we choose to expand, modify, or if need be, dissolve the Dora. One other requirement, as I mentioned earlier, is that the Dora must be reviewed every 5 years by the legislative authority. And that then needs to get pushed up to the Division of Liquor to ensure that we're keeping all of our T's crossed and I's dotted. Are there any questions on that initial part there? Yes.
I'm on the committee, and I think the time we settled on was noon to 10 o'clock.
That is correct, yes.
And this is going to be every day,
Yes.
not just the special events.
Yes, and I'll touch on that later, but I'll touch on that right now too. So the noon to 10 o'clock every day seemed to be the simplest way. We had, I think, discussed some other options on timing, and it just boiled down to we didn't want to make this confusing for individuals. It would be a shame if one day someone was accidentally out beyond the Dora hours because they were under the wrong impression, and noon to 10 o'clock seemed like appropriate times that it's not going to be a noise issue when people are sleeping. But it's still really allowing us to get the full benefit out of the Dora.
But my question, though, comes down to who's going to pay for the extra police patrolling and or public works people emptying trash cans during that time frame?
Yes, we have been in discussion with Chief Edens about this. He feels confident that we have the ability to do so regardless with the existing police force we have. Obviously, if there was a special event, for example, the Fall in Love event, we typically try to up the police presence in the area. But given the foot traffic we would expect, especially during just weekdays and things like that, while we hope it increases, he didn't feel it would be to a point that would overburden the police department. And I will be touch on that later as well, more in depth as to what his findings were on that.
Well, what about cleanup?
Cleanup, likewise too, the service department has said they already do a weekly cleanup of Benson Street, which given normal traffic we expect to be appropriate. While it would be increased foot traffic, part of the benefit here with the Dora is that the designated cups being used would be reusable as opposed to disposable. So people would not be inclined just to toss them, they'd be more inclined to take their trash or cup with them back home so they can use it for whatever the heck they would like to use it for after that.
It's also my understanding that you can't take the Dora cups inside liquor store.
Oh, no, so you can take the Dora cups inside. That's basically you would get your Dora cup at the first establishment you would stop at that day. It's up to the establishments if they wish to charge a nominal fee to get the cup to help offset that cost for them. But after that, you would be able to take your cup to another establishment and they'd be able to use it. If you throw the cup away or if you lose your cup or something, then you could go and purchase another cup in that store too.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions at this point? I have one.
Absolutely.
You mentioned review. Is there a sunset clause?
As in just a period of which the Dora would
Correct.
cease to exist?
It ceased to exist without intervention from council.
So that 5 years, I think, would count as a sunset clause in that sense of if council failed to review it after 5 years, we would no longer be able to utilize the Dora until it was appropriately reviewed again. If council chose to add a sunset clause into the legislation, they'd be free to do so. I have not seen anything as of so far in the guidance from the state that would bar them from doing so.
Thank you.
Just to specify, because it might pertain to that as well, regarding the modification or dissolution of the Dora, the same process utilized to initially stand up the Dora would be followed. So that means that you would have to file with the legislative authority, and then you would have to publish that filing in it lists here as a public newspaper or some means that people will be able to see it, I believe 2 times, and have a public hearing. And then no earlier than 30 days after the publishing of that notice, but no later than 60 days, the legislative authority would then convene and either vote to approve or disapprove, whatever those measures were.
Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you much. So next item here is, I guess, who are the parties involved? Who is pursuing the Dora? The Dora, to my knowledge, started gaining traction in the Bridal district. There was kind of 2 factors. First off, the Fall in Love event is a huge hit every year, especially the past couple we've had. I know there's a bit of a gap between 2019 and the 2021 show, but they were both absolutely fantastic, and I think it really shows how strong the community is getting in that regard. Second off was a bit of a frustration. We would see every Saturday the street is just completely alive from 9 o'clock until 5, and then when the last bridal shop closes, it's a ghost town. And we kind of thought, okay, well, how the heck do we keep people here and make this a fun place to be beyond just the hours of those businesses? We kind of stumbled upon the Dora idea there. We started a committee within the Bridal district to just start investigating it. It definitely gained a lot of traction. When we started the ball rolling a little bit and it became a little more serious, we went to John here with the Chamber of Commerce and asked for Chamber of Commerce's formal blessing to pretty much take point on communications and then bring that back to the Chamber once we had gotten everything cleared to make sure the Chamber was also on board with that as well. Now that committee I speak of consisted of, and unfortunately other members couldn't be here this evening, they had other commitments, Dan Michael from Images by Dan Michael, Tommy Harsh from the Ready Community Arts Center, Kelly Hill from Lace Bridal. Debbie Peak has been on the committee. She unfortunately had to step down just due to work requirements, but she was a huge asset while she was there and continues to be so for the district, and myself as well. Now, ultimately, this is obviously not something that the Reading Bridal District or the Chamber of Commerce can legally push through and put into action. That is going to fall into the court of the Legislative Assembly here. However, what we can do is invest our time and effort into doing the legwork, helping to contact the businesses, helping to prepare the paperwork so that it is as smooth as a process as possible once it gets to you all. I believe I listed off the liquor license holders in the area that would also be affected by this. I'll go over them again for anyone's information. Benson's Tavern, Reading Community Arts Center, Foley's, Red Wine, Valley Tavern, Strong's, Our Place, and Legion's. All these would be eligible to participate in the Dora. If you check, I'm not going to read over the Loveland application that I've handed out earlier. I think it would be a little dry for me to read word by word on it. However, there is an example in there of one of the members, and basically the paperwork that would be required on their part, very minimal, simply saying we would like to be part of this, signature, and they're good to go. Then the liquor license, once Department of Liquor reviewed our application, they would send out updated licenses free of charge that simply annotated that that establishment was allowed to provide Dora cups in addition to their existing permit. Any questions after that little chunk there? All right, fantastic. Moving on to concerns. Obviously, whenever alcohol is involved, there are certain concerns that come to mind. Some particular ones we've gone over is the possibility of increases in crime, alcohol-related incidents, the abuse of the Dora, in that people would just go start making it a BYO sort of a thing, carrying a cup around Reading, and confusion of rules. So to start with the first two items here, crime and alcohol-related incidents. Chief Edens has been just absolutely fantastic in his research. He was critical at first, and that's completely understandable. Again, he's the chief law enforcement officer here, and he would be the one dealing with any negative repercussions of this going into place. He did significant research. He, I believe, researched like 80+ Doras in the state of Ohio, and went to go meet personally with his counterparts in Wyoming and Mason. I believe Katie has some paperwork that he was able to provide from that as well regarding their Doras. And after having some conversations with them, his findings are they have had absolutely zero issues with an increase in any sort of crime or alcohol incidents before and after the implementation of a Dora in their area. It does make sense when you take a step back. If someone's inside of a bar and they're drinking and they come out intoxicated, there's no magic boundary there where suddenly they walk on the sidewalk and they're sober. The Dora simply just permits people that are responsibly consuming alcohol to travel between establishments and increase foot traffic to that regard. Now moving down to the next point here is the abuse of the Dora concept, the idea that someone could simply obtain one of these Dora cups once and then just keep using it forever. There is a check that was proposed to help combat this idea, which would include the utilization of wristbands, essentially different color wristbands for different weekends of the month or weeks of the month, and the city and the liquor establishments would know what color wristbands were supposed to be which week, and this would help deter people that for some reason decide to bring their cup back to the district and not obtain a wristband in that process. The second point brought about with that is that while where there's a will, there's a way. Absolutely, if somebody was completely bent on breaking the rules, coming to the Dora, bringing all the wristband colors with them, and cheating the system, could they? They could. Just as easily, someone can pour vodka in a water bottle and walk down Reading. There's a limit to which we can really control everything, and a limit to which we can't. I know, personally speaking, I would not be inclined with the drink prices in Reading to go that far to abuse that, and I don't think a lot of other people would as well. It has been brought again to the chief's attention, and he didn't seem to be overly concerned about that aspect either. If you see someone filling up their Dora cup from their trunk with a case of beer, the police will go talk to them and say, hey, you can't do that. Last point here, confusion of rules. A key part with the Dora is ensuring that no one's confused as to what they can and can't do there. It is required by Department of Liquor that we place signage, clear visible signage, at all of the boundaries or possible entry and exit points of the Dora. We would definitely do that, and as it states, there would be clear signage. You cannot go past this point with a Dora drink. If someone's going past that point with a Dora drink, they're no longer protected by that open container area. Second off with that too is to the point earlier of the hours, keeping them simple, not making a confusing array of hours. Noon to 10 o'clock will cover just about everything we would want in this community for that. I'm sure the banks, which is also as a Dora, would have a different view on that because they have a very different target group that they're going for there. But here we're looking to retain people that are shopping during the day, but not make this a crazy party central at 2 o'clock in the morning for the local residents. So, are there any questions regarding concerns that weren't touched on there?
I have a question.
Yes.
So you said the cups are reusable. They can take them home for a souvenir.
Yes.
But they're not supposed to bring them back. But they could bring them back. Would they just buy another wristband from somebody from the first bar they go to, or?
In theory, if they came back with a cup to the first bar they go to and bought a wristband, again, they'd be in compliance with the Dora at that point.
But they could do that instead of just.
They could, yeah. I think, again, that wristband concept is to deter people from a BYO kind of
Right.
a situation there, that no one is just bringing their own booze to Reading and walking up and down the street with it, or that no one's just utilizing a cup day in, day out so that they can peruse around Reading with their beverage of choice. So, yep, that is correct.
Okay.
Anybody else? I've got one. Has anyone taken a look at Liberty Center? I know they have a Dora there. I've not seen any wristbands there, and it's a pretty well-behaved crowd.
Yes, actually, we were just up there recently for one of our bridal shows. Absolutely fantastic area they got set up there. They do not have the wristbands, and again, it was simply a suggestion for the possibility of that aspect being abused. I don't think that many, if any, people are going to be inclined to really go that far to cheat the system on going to the establishments here. No one's paying $40 for a drink in Reading. I don't think it's something that's going to really push people over the edge in that regard. But no, I don't believe they have wristbands at Liberty Town Center. However, it's just to highlight that the municipality does have control over how we execute the Dora.
Any others?
Yeah, one of the other things we talked about, having been involved with festivals in the area for many years, one of the reasons the wristbands came up again is because when you have a festival, you have to card people. I mean, absolutely. And using the wristbands with carding people solved a lot of problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that would be one more concern that too, underage, and the wristbands would,
Right.
they said, solve that issue. All right, fantastic. Well, we can move on to the good part now. Benefits. Rejuvenating downtown Reading and the Reading Bridal District. This would be a big deal. As stated earlier, people come here, they leave at 5 o'clock and they're gone. And that's just a complete waste of an amazing community they could be staying in instead of taking their business elsewhere, downtown or up to Liberty Town Center. Keeping folks in the area. They're spending their money here. That means increased tax revenue for the city there. It means increased property values when other establishments are looking for places that they would want to move to. They see Reading and say, oh, they've got a Dora there. Look how busy they are on the weekends. I want to be there. I want to put my business there. And also return of customers. A lot of the business, specifically for the district, it's one-time business or they're here once or twice and they're done. And that's kind of a shame. Obviously, as you know, hopefully they're only buying one wedding dress. I mean, maybe they can buy two. I'm not going to be opposed to that either. But it's still a shame that they don't then want to come back to Reading to enjoy the restaurants and the bars we have here. With that Dora, it's keeping people here, and it's also forcing them to walk back and forth. If you started at Red Wine, had some drinks and some snacks there, and walked all the way down to Benson Tavern, you would pass countless storefronts down there. So maybe you were here to buy a dress or something. You're seeing other wedding vendors. You're also seeing other stores in general. I mean, heck, there's insurance stores and stuff on the street. You might say, hey, they got a really good window display. Let me, jot that number down there and check them out later because I need to hunt around for insurance or something. It's forcing people to use their feet, walk around, and that's going to give a lot more visibility to the businesses here. It also helps lay the groundwork for future projects and events. This is not a magic pill. It's not going to just solve all of the things we want with Reading, but it's going to allow us to start looking into those things more seriously. I know there's talk of the 75 bridge coming down and the possibility of doing something with that area. This lays groundwork. We can take a look at this Dora document in 5 years and say, hey, maybe we should extend it on this road now because now we have a lot of foot traffic going here. It allows us to look into the possibility of more festivals and stuff during the summertime. We all love the Fall in Love event, but what if the city could throw more events like that throughout the year that are going to draw people to Reading? And again, then they're going to see all the businesses and all Reading has to offer, and this is going to be a spot where on Friday night they're looking for a place for dinner. They want to come here instead of going up to Blue Ash or down to over the Rhine or something like that. It's kind of the possibilities are endless on it, but this would help create fertile ground for those things to grow in. Lastly, also, the risk of being left behind if we don't follow through with this. Just a quick peruse on localities in our area that already have a Dora in place. Loveland, Wyoming, Montgomery, Milford, Middleton, Mason, Hamilton, Deerfield, Cheviot, the Banks, Liberty Center and Liberty Township, and Harrison all have Doras right now. They are all creating their own neighborhood districts. If we miss this, that's not going to be great for us. I kind of look at sometimes the idea of you go down Benson, you cross the tracks, and it's like this parallel universe of what would happen to Reading if everything disappeared. I never want to see that personally, but in order to ensure that never happens, we need to start taking actions now to ensure that we're lined up to have success in the future. So that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions regarding that last section or anything at all?
Not a question, but just to build on the economic development part, Linda Fitzgerald, our city's economic developer, is very in favor of this too, from that perspective, so. As well as the chamber.
John, you want to throw anything out on that?
I'd just like to say that, you know,
Come on up.
the times that we're in, as Nick said, he gave a great presentation, and the areas that he just said, the last areas of all the areas that have Dora, this is something that Reading absolutely needs. We got to keep our city refreshed, renewed, and we got to keep changing things up, and this is, you know, a great thing, I think. And it would be a good, and one thing I don't know if he touched on, we did look at, I don't know if he didn't bring it up for a reason, but I thought the question would be asked is, you know, liability. The one thing that I did find out through research and talking with Chief Edens, the bars that that get involved with the Dora, they are contractually liable for any problems associated with the drinking and anything like that. Is the city at risk? Maybe, but you know, we're at risk if somebody trips on the sidewalk anymore. I've checked in with our attorney with the Reading Chamber of Commerce, which is Susan Osbach. I'm waiting for clarification from her, but she's already given me pretty much the okay that everything's good and all that. So that's why I say I'm, you know, I was kind of like with Chief Edens, was on the fence about it, but after doing some research, and Chief Edens really did the research. I mean, he was phenomenal. I'm 100% on board. This is something that really has to happen, needs to happen, and everything to make our city grow.
And as for as many communities that are enacting the Doras, there's more that are in the process and looking to
Absolutely.
start going through the process. They had one, so.
Right.
How much longer do you estimate the process before it comes to us?
We did a estimation, and if we can get things on track, I mean, you know, things don't move real fast, but we were looking if we can get it on board by August of this year. You know, I know it would be kind of into the summer, but we would like it to be sooner, you know, but just everything that has to be done, a lot of legwork.
Dotting i's and crossing t's.
Exactly.
Yep.
Good.
I was just going to add, when this was first brought up, you know, I'd say our administrative team, being myself, the mayor, and Chief Public Works, police chief, fire chief, we weren't pro or for, but we had more concerns. We had a lot of safety concerns with alcohol on the streets and this and that. But as you mentioned, and Chief Edens has looked into it, he's spoken to a lot of his counterparts, and his safety concerns have been allayed, and thus, you know, mine as well. So that was my biggest concern, was strictly the safety aspects of it. But after he's looked into it more, you know, we're supportive.
I know that Chief Edens and Todd Owens is 100% for it. I just actually saw Todd outside and we were talking about it and everything before the meeting, and he said he's 100% for it and all that. So.
Anybody on this side? I've been ignoring you, sorry. Okay, good. Anybody else? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No other guest speakers. Executive session, none scheduled. Any needed? See none. Moving on. Guest administrative official reports. Mayor's report. He is not here. Patrick, do you have one for him?
I both are, yes.
Okay. Well, you're up next, so go ahead.
Thank you. The mayor's in Florida. He had his mother-in-law passed away, and they're laying her to rest earlier this week. So many of you might know Terry, so the next time you see her, if you can let her know. Please remember to dial 911 for any police, fire, EMS emergency. So any emergency, dial 911. There's been a lot of talk about crimes, this and that. We asked our court clerk to look into our court numbers comparatively throughout the state. 2019 is the last time the Supreme Court website has updated the counts, and being 2020, 21, that kind of makes sense. But in 2019, we were the second busiest mayor's court in the state of Ohio. That's something that's been consistent throughout that. So I want to, you know, our police, they are aggressive. And if you saw on Facebook today, we had a very good drug bust. You know, anytime, you know, people are doing illegal activity, especially activity that's directly killing people, we want to do anything we can to get that off the streets. In the month of March, the police did receive 1,288 calls for service. Average of 180 citations are written each month for various offenses. We did receive a grant for body cameras, and there is an ordinance tonight to do the additional on the cruisers. So we hope that council supports that. If not, you know, we can redraft an ordinance strictly for the body worn cameras. As mayor, one of the top priorities has always been working closely and for safety for our schools, our people, our businesses, everybody in town. One of his top priorities has always been to have a community-oriented police department, have a school resource officer, both of which have benefited our city very well. We started hosting a national night out a few years ago, along with other neighboring departments, and this is one of the coolest events, you know, to promote police. Not just police, but we have fire that's been there, National Guard, canine units. I think even the Helivac is landed out in Koenig. So that is, I believe it's the first or second Tuesday in August. So we will get that date to you when that's set. Pool signups begin this weekend, May 7th, 14th, and 21st. So the first 3 Saturdays in May down at the field house from 10 to noon. In 2021, our Public Works Department, recycled 34,000 pounds of scrap metal, approximately 9 tons of old tires, 295 gallons of used oil, 256 cubic yards, which is 51.2 tons of wood chips from branches we collect from residents. And our street sweeper in Vacol collected 69 cubic yards of debris throughout the year. We want to give a big thanks to everyone who took part in the cleanup day, which was started in 1991. Diane Brown and Lisa Schoenberg, I believe, were there at the first years 31 years ago, because Diane remembers it because she said her oldest daughter was only 5 years old at the time. But Diane and Lisa have been Girl Scout leaders this entire time, and they've taken a big leadership role in that event. So we want to thank them. We want to thank We Thrive, Bruce Kaler, and the Mill Creek Alliance crew, who I'm not sure how many years in a row, maybe some of the audience, 20 years in a row, they do a Mill Creek cleanup. So they go in, clean up all kinds of litter, debris to keep our Mill Creek clean. Want to thank, there were several high school kids that volunteered this year. We had several council members that came out. And finally, Susan Slavey, who's our Parks and Recreation Director, she has organized this every year, and with her family helps do it. And I want to thank our fire department, who was grilling grilling hot dogs down at Koenig. The farmers market will open up on May 20th, Friday. It will be every Friday after that till late September. I believe it starts at 4 p.m., but Sabrina's not here, and I believe it's 4 to 7, but we will post that time later.
I think you're right.
4 to 7?
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Remind everyone, we received SCIP grant dollars to repave North Street. The total cost will be about $566,000, and we were awarded $283,000 in grant dollars to repave this. So this will be coming up to bid fairly soon. Moving over, the police chief provided me raw speed data on East Galbraith that he was able to get taken over a 15-day period. This is over 57,000 vehicles over a 15-day period were caught on camera. 99.37% of those, or 56,981, were going 40 miles an hour or less. 289 were going between 41 and 45. 57, 46 to 50. And we did have one outlier that was a 72 miles an hour that it caught. Now, we think it's most likely was a police cruiser, we hope, but we don't have a camera.
I can tell you it wasn't.
So I want to thank him for doing that, and he's been moving this around town. It's been on Maple Drive, and then I've already asked him to move it to another street where we have a complaint on speeding, so he's happy to keep moving this to the problem areas. We've been working on a citywide phone system upgrade. All my department heads have had a lot of input in this, and frankly, their needs are what's driven this. One aspect that's, we're at the close to the finish line with getting started on this project, but one aspect that needed to be corrected right now, and I don't know how this ever happened, but the Hilltop Fire Station and the pump house both have the same address per the auditor. Not sure how that happened, but that has been corrected. I just called the auditor's office and asked him, if you can make this a simple change, and it was made 2 days later. So thank them. Every 4 years, our property and casualty insurance group, the Ohio plan, does an audit of our existing or potential liabilities of all of our properties, employees, and other assets. Part of the process is talking to myself, the department heads, as well as Seth Rudwine for best practices in our parks. At this time, I'm happy that they had no recommendations for things that we needed to correct at this time, so that's good. That's kudos to our departments, because they do an excellent job of training, doing work safely and efficiently. So we have some of the best employees that work for us here. Been working with the Public Works Department on updating some of our water tap-in fees and curb cuts and other right-of-way cuts. We will be bringing this to council once John and I have a chance to go through. We're just going through some of these things right now. Staying with Public Works, they have, so for this council, last year's council approved to put in a salt storage system at Public Works Garage. We utilized COVID dollars for this to the tune of about $40,000. They have completed work last week. They're still tightening up a few things, but it's going to more than triple to close to quadruple the amount of salt we can store here in town. So right now, we can store about 300 tons, 350, depending on how big they want to make their mound. They're going to be able to hold 1,100 to 1,200 tons now. So that's going to greatly, in the past when we've had really bad winters, we've had to call up some of our neighbors and ask, hey, can we borrow 100 ton, just to get us through, the night or the hills. So this should help us a lot. I know Daryl is very happy. First person I asked Daryl, I said, did you call Mr. Albrink? And he said he hadn't yet, because he wanted to make sure it was all cleaned up before Denny came down to take a look. But anyone that knows Dennis Albrink knows that this was something that he is very happy about, talked about for a long time, and I think be thrilled with that. So I wanted to shout out Mr. Albrink for that. There's a cities since we received COVID dollars, we're required to do reporting. So that was completed at the end of last month. With that, I think 2 days before, I saw an article. It made me kind of chuckle at our reporting for, about $1 million when, and this was reported, I think there was an NBC News article that said out of $900 billion that was allocated for unemployment insurance through the COVID, which was needed for a lot of people. But of that $900 billion, an estimated $87 to $400 billion has been stolen with fraud. And even if it's the low amount of 87 billion, I mean, whew, that's, you know, when we talk about smaller government, you know, local government, I just was laughing doing this report on our dollar amount when they're losing billions of dollars. It just kind of made me shake my head. But anyway, we had our health insurance renewal. We are part of the OBC, which is a group of about 12 municipalities in Southwest Ohio. We joined that a while ago in my time, but 7 years ago, we as a OBC as a group, we decided to go self-insured. During that period, the 7-year period that we've been part of that group, our average increase has been 5.3%. The 5 years prior to that, being in the self-insured, was 9.9%. So I mean, that is real dollars that, you know, residents are seeing savings on. I mean, if you just look at the first year alone, and it'll multiply, I mean, that's $30,000, $40,000 conservatively that we're saving in this group. And it's even more if we were a group on our own as a 60 full-time employee group, we would be looking at easily like 15 to 20% a year going out on our own to try to get health insurance. So that's a big boost for us. And our renewal for this year is 4.85%, so a little bit under that 7-year average. So we hope to continue that trend of low increases so we can provide good insurance for our employees. Finally, Thornridge Drive is getting close. Anyone that has driven on it, seen it, we are, you know, I think I'd say we're in the red zone for sure. One side is completely done with the widening, curbs, aprons. The east side, I'd say, is probably 70% completed. By early June to mid-June, the project should be being paved at that point, striped, wrapped up. I know the residents are going to be happy with that, but I do want to thank the residents up there because it's been a pain in the butt. I was up there earlier last week because Alita's working, they're doing such a great job. They got ahead of where we thought they would be in schedule-wise, and a new homeowner had purchased a home kind of in the middle of the block between Bolser and Furman, and when they said, hey, we have a moving truck coming, whatever last Thursday was, they said, oh, they won't. When I talked to them, they said, oh, we won't be anywhere near that house. Of course, they were planning to dig on that day right in front of them, but it worked out well. They were able to get through that house. The moving truck, you know, was able to park parallel to their house, get everything unloaded fairly easily. But they've had a lot of these things throughout the project, you know, and that's all we ask for them, to, hey, work with the residents there. You know, we know it's an inconvenience. But good thing is Alita's top of the line. Most of those guys, you know, work or live here in Reading or have relatives here. So they want to do a good job for us. So thank you again, residents, for being patient throughout this project. It's been a long one. That's all.
Any questions for Mr. Ross? Go ahead, Mr. Powell.
Quick question, Pat. On the body cameras and the dash cams, since you were talking about insurance, would that get us any kind of discount on insurance premium, having those, or?
That there's not a specific discount for that. We get discounts for other things for our property and casualty. We're part of the Southwest Ohio Safety Council, so we go to a once-a-month meeting for that. That gives us, I think, a 2% discount in those premiums, but not specific for body cameras.
Okay.
But it could potentially cut down on our liability if an incident occurred.
And that's what I was thinking. We would have some kind of liability insurance then?
Well, all of our employees, yes, all of our employees are covered with our property and casualty, you know, for that. If we were to get sued for wrongful, yes, they are covered. And what the body cameras do is, hey, turn it on. You know, you can't hide what's on camera.
Exactly.
The eye in the sky never lies. That's what we learned in
Banner.
football.
Hey, Pat, if you get a chance after me, I'd like to talk to you a little bit.
Okay.
I've got another email issue.
Okay.
I have a question. I have something to say. I met one of the lead employees today on the top of Thornridge, and he said they are going to start on the first 5 houses on the east side tomorrow. And he tried to put flyers on people's doors. He said nobody was home. So he said, but they will be there. They can park on the other side of the street, and then they'll be working their way down.
I did notice there was one driveway that had a gap in it. It was probably because they couldn't get a hold of it, but like I said, we're not trying to trap anyone in their driveway. They're not. I mean, they put the flyers, they knock on doors. But yeah, but again, close. Now, when they do pave, there are going to be closures. So I know it's going to be, right now, people can go through the little short section, but when we're paving, it's going to have to be closed. So people are going to have to be understanding that, can't drive on it when they're actively paving.
Yeah.
But we did ask them for start time that when they are, until school, well, it's going to be coinciding when school is out, but from Hunt to Bolser to not start till after 8 o'clock, because that's the bulk of all of the incoming school traffic is completely done by 8 o'clock. So, we'll try to hold them to starting till after 8 o'clock.
Looking pretty good, though. The on that salt dome, before adding any salt to the dome, did they seal that floor, the concrete floor?
I believe they did, yeah.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, because they poured that concrete, I want to say probably close to maybe a month and a half to 2 months ago. So it's been cured and sealed and for a while.
I know there's special sealers used on that for the salt. So.
Yeah. And we are able to, we're on the state bid for salt, and we still have a guaranteed price. I think it was about $71.85, Daryl told me. And I said, let's, we already have, so much that we order, but I said, let's try to get as much as we can at that price, because with everything else, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at $90 per, ton for salt, so.
Does that cost include delivery, Pat, or is
does.
delivery? It does.
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? I got one. Sounds like you collected a lot of data on Galbraith Road. Is that part of the traffic study for the stop signs?
That's a first step, seeing, yeah.
Very good, thank you. Moving on, Law Director, he is absent. Ms. Kotcher, do you have a report from him? Okay.
No.
Treasurer's report, Mrs. Owens.
Thank you. And excuse me, I have an allergy flare-up going on. I have our total income tax receipts for April. 1,484,627 is the total that we took in. The breakdown of that is 752,396 for payroll withholding, 457,959 individual tax collections, and 274,202 for business net profits. Overall, year-to-date is 3,581,379. April so far compared to last year is up 28% nearly, and year-to-date is up 14%. It's not really an accurate comparison because in 2021, the tax due date was in May, so we can't really compare April to April. Same with 2020, that tax due date wasn't until July. So if I look back to 2019, though, we are still slightly ahead. So that is it. And I actually would like to briefly just thank everyone, all the citizens who filed their tax returns in April and any who maybe got extensions and let us know that they have them.
Very good, thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Owens? Seeing none, moving on. Auditor's report, Mrs. Smith is absent.
I actually have one for her.
Excellent, please continue.
Great. Okay, so from Sabrina Smith, the auditor, the audit for 2020 and 2021 is wrapping up. This is a 6-month process, and we hope to have it completed soon. This audit is conducted by the Auditor of State and does multiple wellness checks on our city, including viability, internal controls, capital assets, and fraud. The end of the month reports for April will be out within the next week. And then also, just a thank you for passing the legislation to start the process for the new finance system. This will be beneficial to all of our departments. And that's it.
Very good, thank you. Council committee reports. Finance, Mr. Bronner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've scheduled a Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, May 5th at 6:30 to be held in the council chambers. This meeting is open to the public. We will discuss the funding of field turf installation and track resurfacing at the stadium and the funding of service department equipment. We will also talk about the implementation and benefits of our new finance and payroll computer software, which was approved by council last month. Council approved an amount not to exceed $190,000 from the COVID Relief Fund 501 for this upgrade. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Bronner? Seeing none, moving on. Utilities, lands, and buildings, Mr. Bishop.
I have no report, Mr. President.
Thank you. Zoning, planning, and environment, Mr. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a brief report this evening. I've been researching how other communities in the area are staffing their part-time building and zoning departments. Once I have compiled and had a chance to digest my research, I will provide a summary for discussion. I'm seeing a lot of the same names coming up, so there might be some contract people that kind of serve multiple communities and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to feel how they do it and then look at possibly how we can improve our department. So.
Any questions for Mr. Powell? Next up, laws and contracts, Mrs. Edichico.
I have no report tonight, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Public health and safety, Mrs. Kroger.
Oh, good, because I have a long one. Just kidding. Carla, I do have a mistake, though. It's for April's numbers, not May's. So I'll correct that and send it to you.
I got it.
For the police department run count for April, calls of service were 1,321. Auto accidents, we had 28, which was the same as last month. Booking of original charges were 141, and total criminal charges of 203. And total citations issued were 200. And just to be as transparent as possible, the police chief sends me his entire report. I choose what I think is necessary to read from that report. It just isn't necessary to read the whole thing. I will, however, try and give a little bit more detail than I have for the sake of people requesting it. Out of the 1,321 runs, there were overdoses, a report of child abuse, traffic stops, damage to almost all of our parks, check fraud, and breaking and entering. And while it may be easy to get caught up in the negative, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the police department for their incredible work yesterday. They arrested 2 subjects wanted on felony warrants and seized a large amount of drugs and guns. They also attended the Reading Elementary School Carnival along with the fire department and service department for a touch of truck. And then our fire department runs for April, EMS responses were 186. Fire responses were 39, 6 of those of a all call, for total responses of 225. And like Patrick said, the fire department participated in the cleanup Reading by grilling hot dogs for all the workers who helped. That's all I got.
Good. Okay. Any questions for Mrs. Kroger? See none, moving on. Next up, service, Mr. Boehner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week, we had a service committee meeting. I called the meeting to order, and Andy and Shelley were both there. I'm sorry. I must have wrote the wrong name down because my wife typed this and I didn't look at it close enough. But also in attendance was Chief of Public Works Daryl Courtney and 2 of his employees, John Vance and Matt Morgan. We discussed rolling the service department capital fund into existing funds such as streets and curbs or street maintenance. I'm not sure which one because I know one of those funds is used for matching funds a lot. We'll talk about that more on Thursday. We also discussed other forms of revenue generated by the service department that would go into this fund. And he also talked about Reading's going to be renting out 1 employee and a street sweeper to one of our neighboring communities. We also discussed traffic controls and other city property that's been damaged. This is a problem, Patrick, and maybe you and Sabrina would have to work together on this. The service department does repair at least 2 to 3 times a year. The traffic signal in front of the library gets damaged. That's about $8,000 every time they repair it. But so the money comes out of their operations money to pay for it, the repair. But when the city's reimbursed by the offending person or their insurance company, that money evidently goes in a general fund. So their operations money is getting hit, but they're not getting a return on that. We can take a look at that and see if we can get that fixed. Now, the report for tonight that I got from Mr. Courtney, city crews out patching potholes in the street. The mulcher's been out collecting branches, street sweeper's been out. City crew has completed building the new salt bin in the city garage. Should hold approximately 1,100 to 1,200 tons of road salt at one time. It's got to be, most of you probably know this, but the city crew did all this work by themselves. They're that talented, and they were able to get all this work done and keep the cost down. City crews have been out cleaning out catch basin with a backhoe. City crews have been doing water shutoffs. City's crews responded to residents on Illinois Avenue and secured the residents because of health violations. City hosted a cleanup reading day at the garage. The residents responded very well as their dumpsters were completely full. City crew have taken down Christmas lights. City crews have been replacing street signs throughout the city that's been damaged. City vehicles were cleaned and taken to Reading High School for show and tell on Saturday, April 30th. City crew was called out on April 30th for a concrete spill on South Cathwood. The driver was cited and is being billed for the cleanup. That's all I have tonight. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple questions for you real quick. One isn't really a question, but there seems to be almost like a sinkhole forming on Benson as you cross over from Reading Road next to Rowley's. It seems to be getting bigger almost by the day. So noticed that a couple days ago and then again today. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, or the Chief of Public Works.
I'll give Mr. Courtney a call tomorrow.
And then the other question, and I don't know if this necessarily falls under the public safety or the service. I've been contacted by a few people on Maple Drive about the speeding, and a few have pointed out that there's supposed to be no left turn. I think it's between weekdays between 7 and 4 p.m. And there is a sign there, however, the arrow still shows up in that time frame. And I'm sure you've been contacted.
Well, no, because it was brought up when it first came up, and what was explained to me is that what the purpose of that no left turn is they didn't want people stopping on Columbia in the morning to make that left. If they have the arrow, basically go ahead and turn is the way it was explained to me. Because the whole purpose of that, they didn't want the traffic backing up towards Cross County.
Right.
It wasn't to keep people from coming down Maple.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's where the confusion was, because the sign says that you can't turn, but then there's an arrow that
Right.
shows up during that time, so.
I think you got to remember, that's one very, very difficult traffic light. It took a lot of time, a lot of effort by a lot of people in the city and in the county to make that whole Furman Ridge Road, Maple Drive traffic signal work correctly. And then they threw the Mercy Health Building on top of that, and they had to come up with a way to fit that in without disrupting everybody. So it's working. It works now. It does back up in the evening, but it's going to back up. You can't stop it.
And don't forget about the veterinary hospital and dog kennel place that is open there now as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any
that's all
other
I have.
questions? I got one for you.
Yep.
Is there a way we can do something about that intersection set?
Which one?
Right where you're talking about, where Kennel is and Mercy Health and Maple Drive?
We can't because that's Ambly Village.
That intersection is?
They own, that's Ambly Village on that side of the street.
Maybe it's time to call him. Okay, that's all I had. Anybody else? Moving on, Recreation, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, sir. The City of Reading litter cleanup was another success. I know I was there, enjoyed it, loved seeing all the faces out and about. Extra thanks goes out to Reading Service Department for collecting the bags of litter, for having the garage open for the residents to drop off large items. All participants were invited back to Kinnick Park, where the city provided a hot dog, chips, and soft drink, and a cookie. Thanks also to the fire department for grilling the hot dogs. Thank you to the residents and organizations such as Reading High School Honor Society, teachers, We Thrive, and Walk with a Purpose that helped throughout the city and St. Peter and Paul Cemetery. Next, we have pool signups coming up the next 3 Saturdays, May 7th, May 14th, and May 21st at the Hafey Field House from 10 to noon. Please remember to sign up before June 10th, I believe. It is June 1st, okay. Take advantage of the lower rate. After June 1st, the rates increase. You'll also be able to sign up your child for the first session of swim lessons during the pool signups. Pool opens on Saturday, June 4th at noon. Also, at the end of the month, we have the Memorial Day Festival and Softball Tournament. That's May 27th through the 30th at Kinnick Park. It's always an excellent affair. Please bring your family on down. The Memorial Day Parade will take place on Monday morning, May 30th. And lastly, at all our parks, we continue to have problems with vandalism, graffiti, things like that. I know I cleaned up some Sunday morning. I took my grandkids to Hilltop, and there was some written on chalk. I was able to take care of it myself. But if anyone catches, anyone committing these crimes, please call the police department, and so we can try and nip this in the bud. We like to keep our places as clean as possible and keep families feeling safe when they take their children there.
Did you say your grand?
Yes, I have grandchildren. That's the first time I've heard that. Thank you. That's all, sir.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Thomas? Seeing none, moving on. Other business. Any other business? No other business. Moving on, legislative session. Resolutions, none on the agenda. Reading of ordinances.
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to purchase body-worn, in-car cameras and supporting equipment and declaring an emergency.
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules for the second and third reading.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mrs. Edichico and a second by Mrs. Kroger to suspend the rules for the second and third reading. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
7 yes, the motion carries.
Move to
Motion to
adopt. Second.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Powell and a second by Mr. Boehner to adopt the ordinance. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
7 yes. Ordinance number, please.
2022-13.
Just real quick, the reason to suspend the, or for declaring an emergency is because there is a time limit on the grant money.
Thank you. I was hoping somebody would say that. I did see that in the legislation, but people out there don't see the legislation. I would really hope that if there's another suspension, that whoever asked for the suspension would just grab away. Thank you. All right, number 2.
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to have equipment purchased and switched over as needed for two 2022 cruisers and declaring an emergency.
I'll make a motion to suspend the second and third reading.
Mrs. Edichico's motion to suspend the second and third reading. Rules requiring second and third readings. We got to be
Yes.
clear. I heard a second over here. Was that you, Mr. Bronner?
I'll second it.
I thought,
I think you already seconded.
Did he?
I think.
you didn't hear it?
He wasn't loud enough.
I heard Mr. Bronner. Okay, that's all right. A roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
7 yes, the suspension carries.
Move to adopt.
Motion to adopt by Mr. Boehner.
Second.
He won.
He
He was
won.
quicker.
Okay.
We're all
Second by
eager.
Mr. Bishop. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
7 yes, it's adopted. Ordinance number, please.
2022-14.
And the emergency was because, also timeline on that one? I
Yes.
think
Yes.
Okay,
And the need.
and the need, yes. Number 3.
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to purchase structural firefighting turnout gear for the fire department and declaring an emergency.
Pat, is that something that needs to be done right away?
Yes. Sorry.
Pat, you look different.
I couldn't get my voice that high, but I tried.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I believe you
Give the
said
reason.
that
I was gonna
because
give
of
the reason, too.
anticipated price increases.
Okay, all right. I'll make a motion. We suspend the rules, quarter second, third reading.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to suspend rules for second and third reading made by Mr. Boehner and seconded by Mr. Tomlin. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
The rules are suspended.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Move to adopt by Mr. Boehner and second by Mr. Edichico, Mrs. Edichico, sorry. Too much of a mix. Roll call, please.
Mr. Powell?
Yes.
Mr. Bronner?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Boehner?
Yes.
Mr. Tomlin?
Yes.
Mrs. Kroger?
Yes.
Mrs. Edichico?
Yes.
7 yes, it carries. Ordinance number,
2022-15.
very good. Okay, miscellaneous business. Anybody?
Move to adopt. Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
hang on,
Okay.
I just wanted to remind everybody of the May 17th and 20th from 11 to 2 at the library for the Gid Covered Ohio. I meant to say that in my report and I forgot.
Shelley, will you send electronically what the details that she
Yes.
sends you, because I'll put it on our city's page.
Okay.
Very good.
Move to adopt.
Move to adopt?
To adjourn.
Move to adjourn?
I'm adjourned, yeah.
Second.
I said it right the first time. You made me say it again.
Motion to adjourn made by Mr. Boehner and seconded by Mr. Bishop. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Everybody have a good night.